You're listening to the Ask Drone U podcast. You ask, we answer your drone questions. Whether you're here to turn your passion into profit or you simply fly for fun, we're a community of learners and teachers who aspire to achieve greatness. We are
Drone U.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask Drone U from colorful Colorado. My name is Paul.
My name's Rob. It is definitely colorful right now. It's beautiful out there, even though I was inside all weekend. Damn it. But
working on that house.
Working on the house, yeah. Anyways, thankful to be here, hanging out with you, and thank you to everybody out there who's listening. We really appreciate it. We know you got a lot of things that you could be doing, and if you're spending a few minutes with us, it matters. We appreciate it very much, and it motivates us. So thank you, and we hope today's show will help you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone who is a Drone U member, taking advantage of those 40 classes. We've got actually a lot more classes coming up for you. We're in a production super cycle right now, so very excited for that. Also, thank you to everyone who took advantage of being grandfathered into that old price point. Now we launched that new price point. Obviously, with inflation the way it is, it's kind of hard to keep costs low with inflation the way it is. I know many of you are facing that, but I still believe that we're offering the greatest amount of value on the internet when it comes to learning the practical use cases of flying drone missions. So thank you to everyone. Today actually is probably one of the first shows in a very, very, very long time that we wanted to hit a particular topic and didn't have a question just because it's so relevant right now, Rob.
Yeah, it's very relevant, unfortunately, but anyways, we'll get into it and hopefully it'll be useful.
Definitely. So let's just get right into it. Obviously, many of you know it is hurricane season, and we have done podcasts and shows before on disaster relief, but I'm not sure that we've really ever talked about the types of drone operations that are really happening in these disaster situations. And in working with some of our previously trained pilots who are now in some very powerful positions, we've really been able to highlight what these missions look like, and more specifically, the deliverables that are being created. So we want to talk about that and also talk about how one particular deliverable can literally be valuable for public safety in multiple different use cases, but also for public safety to get federal funding and for people to get emergency disaster funding as well. So we're going to try to keep this succinct and short, but there's so much value to some of these data products. It's almost hard to believe.
Yeah. So as we think about hurricanes and obviously the devastating effect of those, which we all know it's awful, and we feel horrible for the people that are dealing with this. I can't even imagine. I honestly can't. So how can drones be helpful? What kind of drone missions are going to be sort of at the forefront to actually make their role in this meaningful?
I think it's a very important question. And recently, one of the pilots that we trained is working with the Tennessee Department of Transportation, who recently did a white paper on their assessment of what they've been using drone missions for. And I think that this is such a good kind of source material to showcase that at the end of the day, most of these drone missions are becoming mapping missions. We're talking autonomous flights, capturing data in a particular way to be able to have a near real-time sense of what is going on the ground. Because with these drone missions, Rob, we're able to fly and acquire data rather quickly, produce an orthomosaic, which I would say is one of the three main deliverables, to acquire information for assessments.
Okay.
And when it comes to assessments, these assessments are really, really valuable for public safety, because let's say they need to get into a particular area, they fly a mapping mission, they create their orthomosaic, let's say, for an example, a non-georeference ortho at a react, right? With that one ortho, they are now able to discern navigational paths to get assets in.
Yeah.
They're able to discern where to set up communication networks like, AT&T's FirstNet etc. That they're also able to discern how and where to send what assets, but also the routes of getting them there. So this is going to help them really be able to, one, make a quick assessment. Where do we need to send stuff? Where is the most damage? How do we get there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see a specific use case. I was listening to Governor DeSantis talk about this in some of the islands for which the bridges are, of course, destroyed, right? So they need a lot of help on those islands, and getting to them is very, very difficult. And so they're going to have to be using helicopters. But even sending the drones to do these assessments before the helicopters can I would assume, make it more efficient for how the helicopters do their work. Oh, yeah. I mean, think about, too, there was one scenario in 1997 where our hometown, this was before I moved to my dad's house, our hometown was essentially blocked off by a flood in every direction. And they used helicopters just to get, basic supplies in because the grocery stores ran out of food. So, I mean, they were sending in water, etc. So with these maps, we're going to be able to assess where the most density of people are and how to get those assets in via helicopters. Right. Yeah, but Rob, I mean, the value doesn't stop there. With these same maps, they're able to classify the severity of damage. And there were companies, Tennessee was working on a program using Python to actually automatically discern damage severity based off of certain variables. Amazing. Really brilliant. Yeah, it's fantastic uses of technology, obviously. So you mentioned orthos, and that was one of the 3 deliverables. What are the other 2, and kind of what's the best case in terms of using each of them? So the 3 deliverables were a digital terrain model, an orthomosaic, and a point cloud. And so I think it's easy to discern that assessment with the orthomosaic is going to be really, really easy, but also really fast. The only limitation with those 2D deliverables, something like an orthomosaic, we're really not going to be able to get the best 3D measurements. So let's say, for example, that you were to run that same mission that you initially flew, but you run it in something like Pix4D Mapper or Matic or Drone Deploy or Propeller or whatever, Maps Made Easy, okay? Or Measure. There's so many options now. In running that data through one of those other mapping engines, you're going to be able to acquire very important information for FEMA to do their payouts, which is measuring the amount of material that has been essentially destroyed and needs to be removed. It helps them with not only their logistics plans of getting heavy equipment in to remove said issues, but it's also a documentation, not just a documentation of the area for assessment, but also to get paid by the federal government to remove said information. So I see opportunities for state and local agencies to utilize this 2D and 3D data to really communicate on a national and even international scale to make decision making faster, asset allocation faster, but also in discerning which areas are hardest hit to prioritize those areas. So and just be more efficient and quick with that efficiency to get things done. I mean, there's people potentially that are literally waiting for help that could die soon still. Literally. I don't necessarily mean today, but when you're in the middle of these missions and it's within days of the hurricane, et cetera, time is of the essence, to say the least. It really is. And because time is of the essence, it really actually brings up an important point, which is in that same report that we talked about, they mentioned that most of the data sets that they ran were geo-referenced data sets. Now, public safety, primarily law enforcement, and I believe fire as well, typically has an exemption in regards to surveying law, but that'd be something you have to look up on a state-by-state basis. Typically, in most states, it is that way. But that said, you talk about time, and geo-referencing these maps would add a significant amount of time. And now you're sending people to walk around and shoot points and whatnot. And so I really beg the question to the people who are running most of these missions, is geo-reference data sets really the right way to go? So are you saying that you've seen that they are being done?
I'm saying that in research it's being done. I don't know in the real world if it's being done. Because think about it, it adds so much more time to the collection process, the acquisition process, laying down points, shooting them, throwing out arrow points, etc. Now you're having to actually get people into areas that you might not have the right information to discern how to safely get people in those areas. You see what I'm saying?
I do. I think if they're going to do that, it seems like that would come a little bit later down the road when you're starting to talk about rebuilding.
Yeah.
Right? That maybe then it would make sense. I don't know kind of when in the timeline of the event occurring and starting the different phases of cleanup and reconstruction, et cetera, when it would be a good idea to get in there and have some georeference data. But at some point, I think it would make sense. Probably not for a while.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And we're seeing that drones are being used in all phases of the response and recovery efforts from the very beginning to the end. And I mean, if you're a resident of Florida, it might even be valuable for you to have a 2D model or 3D map of your home as essentially a visual representation of inventory.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, insurance companies have been telling us to inventory our the interior content, so to speak, of our home since the inception of insurance, as far as I know. So why not do the same thing with your actual home or with your cars or everything that you have? Kind of put it all out there and then do a couple of shots and inventory it.
100%. And I mean, I would keep this data obviously private and behind some sort of security wall. But in having that data, think about the speed and the increase of getting a payout from the insurance company, but also the quality or the amount of the payout.
Yeah.
So
100%. One of the things I wonder is, as it relates to drones, have you seen anything, or I could make a case for the value, but what are your thoughts on like a live feed using a drone?
Well, I've seen it used a lot, actually, and I know companies like Easy Aerial are increasingly being tasked with producing their Falcon systems and providing a live feed over areas. I mean, it's a tethered system, but it can also, fly untethered to go check certain stuff out. There's honestly, it's a great system to even zoom in and get, real-time data. Do I see that being used? Yes. Do I know how much it's being used? Unfortunately, no, I don't really. But I think that there is clear value in that, because if you have people on their roofs spray painting SOS or yelling at the top of their lungs, you're going to have a much better ability to discern who's in real trouble and needs that immediate help.
Yeah, another thing that comes to mind is the Wingtra, which just kind of leads to a general conversation about what types of drones are being used. But is there a need for a fixed wing like a Wingtra?
This is such a solid question, Rob, because at the end of the day, when we are thinking about these three main deliverables that are being produced, and if we're using a multi-rotor, even if you have batteries to last you all day long, the maximum that you're really going to cover in any given area is going to be 400 or 500 acres, like the size of maybe an 18-hole golf course. And honestly, that's just really not that efficient.
Not after an event like this.
Well, 100%. And then you think about if they're even georeferencing it, now it's really not efficient. And with something like the Wingtra system, you are now flying 300 to 400 acres per hour. And it's also can be georeferenced quickly and easily, with like 1 point on the nearest CORS tower or one arrow point. You really can do so much more georeference material and at scale. And so I really do see that particular drone, but also the workflow that Wingtra has developed in processing their data and their imagery to be extremely valuable and extremely useful as a whole. I know that there are other fixed wing systems out there, and honestly, I haven't really seen the workflow and if there's even mapping cameras on some of these other big fixed wing drones to get the efficiency of flight, the efficiency of acquisition, but also the efficiency of data processing.
Yeah, that processing piece is obviously very important.
So something like Wingtra is going to be a force multiplier.
That being said, what are some of the multi-copter? I would assume like an M300, or they just use,
we're seeing lots of M300s. That kind of sucks though, because again, the point clouds out of those are just garbage. And then we are seeing a lot of M30Ts out there. We're seeing a lot of Phantoms, obviously. When we're seeing a lot of Mavics. I think the diversity. We're seeing a lot of Skydios too. The more expensive enterprise version of Skydios.
Sure.
It's just that with these multi-rotors, again, this brings up kind of a fundamental issue of how can I get highest quality data in the most efficient amount of time. And when you think of the, large full frame sensor that you get from a Wingtra, you can fly 400 feet up and still get 1-inch GSD on the ground.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And on a Phantom, you're going to be flying 120 feet to do that. So the flight times are going to be longer. You're not going to get as high quality data. And Wingtra is like, yeah, not only can I get that high quality data, but if we need to georeference it over our PPK system, we can do that at scale too. And in part of getting this podcast ready, Rob, I was looking at our new drone guide for public safety. And if you haven't seen that, propsflightschool.com, check it out. Go to the public safety page and you'll see it. You can download it there by providing your email. The Wingtra really is by far going to provide efficiency at every aspect of the drone mission, from acquisition to georeferencing to data processing. And frankly, I don't see another system that can provide that and is also Blue SUAS rated.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now
Big
you're
issue.
making the feds happy, right? Because you're flying drones that don't have Chinese parts in them. And honestly, funny enough, Wingtra just moved their offices down into Florida. So maybe they saw the opportunity arising.
Maybe. Yeah. Very interesting stuff. So what's something, so I think we haven't really covered software much. I mean, you kind of listed some of the processing entities out there, but what are going to be some of the more important software packages people are going to need to be familiar with if they want to be involved in something like this?
Well, and again, I think that we need to break this down on georeferenced or non-georeferenced data sets. Although, again, in using the Wingtra system, if we're using Wingtra Hub and we are georeferencing over their PPK system, well, then you can actually use React to create georeference maps, which is the only way that I know to actually do georeference maps out of Pix4D React. But in general, non-georeferenced data sets, I think we're going to see Pix4D React being by far the most capable, not only because of the super fast timeline to create orthomosaics. You don't need super fast computers. You do not need internet, but also you can share the data in the fastest, most convenient methodologies possible. PDFs, simple imagery, but you can even, create annotations on those maps, notate what direction that logistics needs to go, notate severity of damages, color code them, and provide and spit out a report. The amount of processing and interpretation that you can do with that software, you simply can't do elsewhere unless you have, a great internet connection, which you're not going to have in these areas.
Right.
That infrastructure is down. So utilizing cloud processors really isn't the best solution at times. And also a bummer for a lot of the cloud processors out there. Most of them are not CGIS compliant. So technically they cannot be used in these environments. So Pix4D React was really built for public safety. And I've been promoting it for a long time because of these exact aspects. No internet, super fast production, and reporting. It's really that easy.
Yeah, because the idea here is that you're trying to get the best data possible in front of the decision makers, the people that are leading the charge to take care of people, make sure people are safe, get people out, et cetera, et cetera. They need good data quick so they can make the decisions they need to make.
Yeah, 100%. And Pix4D React does that. When we're creating point clouds, again, if we don't have internet, Pix4D Mapper and Matic for these bigger data sets is going to be kind of the way to go. You can get those DTMs in step 3 as well. But when I also think of FEMA compliance and I think of, measuring these areas that need to have recovery and removal, if we have internet up at that point, in all honesty, I would be using drone deploy to do these volumetric measurements. And there's 3 reasons why I would use drone deploy. Number 1, we're going to be able to process quickly. Again, this is on the idea that we're going to have internet. So quick processing, we're going to be able to make those volumetrics or those 3D measurements much easier than in Pix. The reporting is much easier, but also you can color code your volume. So if you're trying to go after, this is a removal volume, this is a volume that we need to, remove certain things out of the roads for navigation or clean up, a flood zone, for example. You can color code those different volumes, and you can even set up the density of material. So let's say that you're measuring damage from a house and you want to like essentially notate a density of wood and change your volume that way. You can do it. Let's say you're measuring a flood area and you want to measure the density of all the silt and sand that needs to be removed. Well, that's a different density of aggregate as well. So you can do that in Drone Deploy and export those reports very quickly. Again, this is under the premise that you're going to have internet.
Yeah. Boy, there's a lot to think about, and just pray for the people that are kind of leading the charge out there and trying to make sure people are safe and, man, get back into their homes as soon as possible, which for a lot of people, I don't know. I suppose you move.
Yeah, and there's one last thing I want to go over before we wrap this up, which is that I think public safety departments, especially local authorities, have an opportunity to monetize their operations to the federal government to subsidize a lot of the work that they're doing here. And what do I mean? I mean, if you've got local public safety agencies who are responding and they're doing these mapping missions as a whole, they can sell that data to insurance companies. They can sell that data to the feds. They can even cross departments sell that data. This is a big opportunity. If you've got Public Works who says, hey, you guys made maps of the whole city during Ian, right? Well, we need to take that and put it over our as-built and be able to understand and discern the best methodologies of fixing infrastructure or providing new infrastructure. There's really a lot of opportunity here for fire departments to get and public police departments to get additional federal funding to be able to help those departments further help people without exploiting the people themselves. So I think it's a phenomenal opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyways, anything else that you want to mention before we sign off?
Well, I do want to say that if you are in public safety and you're considering drone training, you've got to check out our Props public safety platform. It was designed and built over multiple years. It covers many different types of drone operations, and it was built to help you create systems to run and maintain your program as a whole. We are also firing off a new props program specific to exactly what we're talking about here today, which is our disaster relief program. It is not up on the website, but we already have built essentially the modules to bridge all the courses that they need together. We have kind of a simplified version and an expanded version. So if you're trying to get out there and just, get these orthos done, get these measurements, etc., non-georeference, all those courses are ready to go right now for anyone in disaster response. It's also very affordable. And then we have an expanded program that goes into kind of Props Mapper and what that offers, all available at propsflightschool.com, the enterprise division of Drone U. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. As always, my name is Paul.
And I'm Rob.
And we get our fuel by helping out drone pilots and doing what they love and helping other people.